Hey, everybody, this is Scoots. This is a new kind of experimental version of Sleep With Me we've never done before. So welcome. These are just bedtime stories from our podcast, Sleep With Me. And to make them feel fresh, these ones are from a couple of years ago. So if you're a regular listener, you might get a refresh. And if you're new, these are just bedtime stories from a show called Sleep With Me. They're strange, they're meandering, they're a little bit different. And all this is made possible by listeners like you, regular listeners like you. And so I just want to let you know that's how we're able to put the show out. And so if you are a fan of Sleep With Me, you listen to it on a regular basis, please consider supporting the show. You get ad-free episodes, you get ad-free story-only episodes, tons of other cool stuff at Sleep With Me Plus. That's sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. But if you're in a position and you have some money every month, or you say, hey, maybe I don't watch that streaming service, I'd rather give it to a podcast, think about your favorite podcast. It doesn't have to be Sleep With Me, and support that podcast. If it is Sleep With Me, I consider supporting the show would be great. But if it isn't, or there's a podcast you listen to way more, brings you a lot of value during the day, please support that podcast. Podcasting's going through a different time right now, and your favorite podcast, the one you get the most out of, could use your support the most. So consider supporting it however they request support. Just check it out, like listen to the show or check out their website, or consider supporting Sleep With Me. If Sleep With Me, you say, oh no, Sleep With Me is the one I listen to the most, sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus. Thanks. Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for a tale. Not sure if you could say it's going to be tall, but it'd probably be long and pointless and full of meanders. You say, is it a tall tale? I say it's more like a swirly, one of those curly, what do they call them, swirly straws or curly straws? If they don't call them swirly straws, they really missed out. I would assume they do, because your drink swirls through them. My tall tales are swirly and whirly, and for some they feel churly after listening, but it's time for Sleep With Me. Hopefully you won't feel that way. Also, F me I, for my information. Is churly a word? I mean, I felt churlish many a times. Oh boy. Even if it's not a word, I hope it's like, I feel like there's about 33% of the time I've got a churl going on. And when they see me walking down the street, they say there's a churl in that boy's step. Anyway, it's time for Sleep With Me podcast. It puts you to sleep. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots. This is a quick message here. If you get a lot out of Sleep With Me, if you're a regular listener, you like these new things we're trying out, like the story-only version of the show. If you're new, don't worry about any of this. But if you're a regular listener of Sleep With Me, or you're a regular listener of any podcast, if you have a favorite podcast, and it's not Sleep With Me, that's totally cool. If you have podcasts you listen to way more, or you get way more value out of, I totally understand that. Consider supporting that podcast. Podcasting as an industry is kind of going through a weird phase right now. Direct support from listeners it seems like it's going to be the future of most shows. And so consider supporting the podcast you really love. And you could do that. You could find out, you could listen to the show and see how they ask to be supported. Or reach out to them and say, hey, how can I support you? Or if you can't afford, a few dollars a month, you say, hey, how else can I support you? But if Sleep With Me is the one, Sleep With Me Plus is the best way to support Sleep With Me. Sign up for Sleep With Me Plus. Not only you get an unbelievably sweet, different ways to listen to the show, but it's a huge help for us to be able to do stuff like this. But yeah, think about what your favorite podcast is, and then go ahead and go to their website, or if you already know how they like to be supported, support that show. Thanks and good night. All right, everybody, you're in for a treat tonight, because we're telling another story that I knew about and then I forgot about, but now I can never forget about it. It's called The Case of the Approachable Safe. It's from a collection of stories, untold tales. Somewhere in my imagination, these stories are being told, and every once in a while I catch a whisper, and then I go back and I say, wait, tell me more. is this one of those Lady Marple mysteries? And they say, Scoots, that's not a good idea. And I say, well, it's a possibility, though, that somewhere out on a bog, a comforting bog, lives Lady Marple. And she, like she was once like a regular like person, Miss Marple or Mrs. Marple or Ms. Marple or Marple is, she preferred, just call me Marple. And she lives out on, and I say, when I say Lady Marple, I always think of, I think it was, I don't know if I always think that I can't remember when, like, there was a G.I. Joe toys I played with as a lad. They were action figures or action figurines. The G.I. Joe characters were known. I think one of the advancements they had was, the comedian said this, but I think it was true, that they had a kung fu grip, which meant that so they had, oh man, now I'm trying to think of how to describe it. Reticulated, is that what it is? They had elbows and knees and hip joints and shoulder joints. But then at some point they also became able to rotate their arms below the elbow. And that was a pretty big advancement. And they also had like a neck joint so their necks could move, their heads could move around. Like, when you talk about toys, not to say, Lady Marple's like, excuse me, I thought this was the case of the missing safe. And I said, yeah, we'll get there. But I was thinking of Lady J or Lady Jane, who was one of the top three. So when I played with G.I. Joes, there was no G.I. Joe. I think the earlier generation, there was a G.I. Joe character. So G.I. Joe was a brand, and I think it was like a super secret. Scoots, doesn't that stand for everything you stand against at this point? I say, well, pretty much. But they were great heroes and heroines. Lady J, I don't know. I think it was like Duke, Lady J, and somebody else, Griswold, maybe. I don't know who the third person was, who were kind of running the show. I was never, I guess as a kid, like I said, I would root for the other team because they were always the underdogs. And I think it probably informed an entire generation of storytelling or storytellers that played with toys, because it was a bit of a trope back then in the 80s that the futility of the villains. Because the 80s were an era, oh boy, were they an era when villainy was not considered, even though they had Gordon Gekko. I don't know, there's a lot of repression going on, and part of that repression was saying, well, we're going to have the childhood hero, the childhood cartoons only have villainy is futility. And don't know what my point was, other than Lady J or Lady Jane was one of them. But I don't think she was like a royalty. All that to say, I've gone royally off topic. So let's get back to the point at hand, which is that, where were we? Okay, so Lady Marple, nothing to do, you say, Scoots, I've heard of Marples before. Is this anything like the more famous Marple? And I say, no, this is Lady Marple. She was granted the order, whatever order is bestowed on you to be a lady by the queen. But she was still solving cases, as I teased in the opening of the show. And she lived out on a bog. And she had a porch, a back porch that looked out on the bog where she would sit at night. It actually had, what do you call that, a little silk screen or silk netting around the porch so she could sit out there and not have to worry about the bog-based beings. coming and bothering her. That was one of the first cases she solved, the case of the bog-based beings that got on my nerves when I decided to live at a bog. The Lady Marpbels story, part 44. That was a part of her biography series, and not a case we're discussing, because it was pretty easily solved. It wasn't easily solved. She tried other stuff. Fans was one of the things she tried. Low-powered and high-powered fans to blow away any. And she said that kind of worked, but it also got on my nerves and used energy and wasn't 100% not as effective as other things. And she said, this works great because I can see the bog and I can hear the bog. I can soak it in. And it has like a doorway in there. I think that zips up so she can go out towards the bog, if she wants to. But this is also her back porch. A little bit more rustic than what you would do, what they call in Florida a lanai, which is different, I think, than other places in the world. Like when I hear lanai, I think of I think of the ocean in Hawaii and just a beautiful view. It could be of the mountains. But in Florida, lanai is like a screened in, like an outdoors, indoors, more or less. Or I guess it's a confused space. It is, and for a multitude of reasons, because one, it's kind of outdoors, it's kind of indoors. It has screens, so you can see stuff, but then with the temperature in Florida, you're like, well, I could just go outside, or I'm going to go inside where the AC is. Normally, lanai won't have AC unless then it also has windows, and then you're like, well, this is just a porch now. I think that's what we call them, a screened-in porch. Now, Lady Marpbels' porch is not screened in. It's kind of under a net. I don't know. Tough to say, but very inventive and fits the mystique or whatever you want to say. Fits the space very nicely. And that's where Lady Marpbels would like to sit. Like she liked to think. She liked to have her tea. She drank tea and coffee. She'd have tea between waking up and 10:45, coffee. 10:45 to 2 p.m., tea. After 2 p.m., other stuff till about 8 o'clock, herbal tea. With, non-caffeinated. And sometimes she would make sun tea, and actually she could make it on the porch because it was because of the netting or the screening. The sun could still get there. And that was one of her favorite things. She had a western-facing view of the bog, so she could sit there. And she would tell her guests that, they never necessarily, she'd say, you haven't seen the sun set till you've seen it set over a bog. But they would normally, be distracted. Very few people can be enthralled by a bog, and it's a good test. And I could tell you, you haven't been enthralled till you've been enthralled by a bog. Because you could sit out there, you can listen to the bog, and then like Lady Marpbels would say, the sounds change as the sun sets on a bog. And she even would break into song sometimes, doing a little Elton John. I think that because Elton John probably has a song that she could easily change to like and put in words like when the sun sets on a bog. I think you'd probably have to say when the sun goes down on a bog or something. But not many people appreciate it because they think of their times at the ocean or the lake or some other area, overhyped, that doesn't get the love of a bog. Understandably, because you can't really swim in a bog. And a lot of people associate bogs and bugs, but in this case, the best of both worlds when you're with Lady Marple, because she solved that case. But she was sitting out there, and one of the things she liked to do is just relax. And she also found another thing soothing, which was like a giant gumball machine. And she not only found it soothing. Well, one of the reasons she found it soothing is her guests could get a gumball, and she would always do a slow burn where she would give them a coin when they arrived, and she'd always say, "Hold on to this for me." Particularly if there was children or if there was adults, particularly if there was someone who might be labeled persnickety, is that the right word? She would hand them a coin and say, "Oh, by the way, hold on to this for me." And if they said more, she said, "Well, we're going to need it later, maybe." And she would take them out. Eventually they would make their way at some point to her treasured area, unless, they were a guest that was guest focused. And they say, "No, I'm not interested in your home. I'm interested in being a guest in your home." But normally they would work their way out there, and it was a beautiful gumball machine. And at first glance, most people wouldn't notice it because they say, "You seen one?" I don't think many people have said this, but it is assumption you make that you're just not even aware of. You say, if I've seen one gumball machine, I've seen them all." And I say, well, that's probably totally impossible. But it's like, Malcolm Gladwell had a chapter about it in one of his books. Wink, I think, was the one that said, it's called the gumball machine paradox or something, where you say, okay, you just assume they're all, like, they're all different, but you don't, you say, well, I don't have time. Well, if I need some gum, I got a pack in my pocket now. Modern era of convenience. And then you may say, "Scoots, no, I can picture and I say, well, yeah, that's your archetypal gumball machine in your mind. I can see it too. It's got that metal stuff. It's got some glass stuff, probably some metal, on the top. Maybe it's got a stand or, dare I say, a shaft to the floor. And maybe it's like a little antique looking. Maybe you picture more something in a globe-like shape." And you say, okay, now, Lady Marple's, hers was a little bit more not grand, I was going to say grandiose, but it kind of was, it was glass, and it was the size of one of those big water bottles, like back when people would talk about stuff around the water cooler at the office. But it was a little bit higher off the ground. And one of her secrets was that the glass and its thickness and the setting of the sun, it was all complementary to one another. And it did go down into something very similar, but a little bit more color than just a red or a blue. You had some yellows into a familiar gumball machine with the thing where you put the coin in. And you twist it, and then some gumball comes out. Now, another little thing about Lady Marple was there's just not one size gumball. One size gumball does not fit all. And she would choose her gumballs very wisely and with a lot of decision. She was what you would say is a gumball connoisseur because she had traveled the world and learned what parts of the world have gumballs, what don't, and where gumball manufacturing takes place. And, something that they haven't heard of in Brooklyn or Oakland as of the time I'm recording this, bespoke gumballs. Somewhere in the world they're making them, whether it's Notting Hill or like a cool part of Singapore. They say, "Scoots, please don't, and I say, okay, well, one day, I'm a little bit behind that, but she knew where there was bespoke gumballs. She didn't really make her own gumballs because she preferred to support gumball artisans, as well as mass manufactured gumballs. She actually knew a lot about the process. And she, and color was a big part of it. And she would actually curate her own gumball machine from time to time. But she also found it soothing. And, did I mention she used different sized gumballs in there? And occasionally she'd say, well, I'm feeling something. She'd go online if needed. Or she'd call, she'd hop on the old air horn or whatever they call it. And she'd say, you got anything in a chicle shape, but I'm looking for something not quite aquamarine. And they'd say, Lady Marple, she said, put it on the Marple account, stat, or don't, send it out, but just, make sure to send it properly. But yeah, she could curate her gumball machine. She would use, now she was very conscientious about, so she would put on gloves, rubber gloves or latex-free gloves. I'm not sure because I wasn't, I don't know. I was never there when she was curating or organizing. She didn't really call it organizing, working on the gumball machine. I mean, some people knit, in one of her dreams that was never realized, and she was a big fan of the Tate Modern, and she was actually setting aside funds, and maybe she still is. I don't know why I'm talking about it in the past tense, but I guess because I don't have the same hope in my heart that Lady Marple does. But she did hold a dream of having a giant, she thought it would be better as an overturned water bottle, but, something, probably 8 stories wide, 30 stories tall, glass, something to do, another artisan, not her, and then filled with gumball, art as gumballs and actual gumballs, of course, so that at some point, or multiple points, you could get a gumball from the gumball machine. So she said, oh yeah, then maybe some people could do something similar to sand art with gumballs. And then they could present it, and then we see as it changes, she said, then the art will change as people chew gum. And then maybe there's even a wall of chewed gum before, because they said, don't come in this museum. Or please don't spit your gum. That's one thing I always wonder about in New York City when I lived there, when I visit there. And I always say, am I wrong, or is that gum on the subway? Especially coming out of the platforms, into the streets. But sometimes on the subway platforms, they say, is that gum on 40-year-old gum there? Or is it something else? And I said, well, boy, if it's not gum, please don't tell me unless it's tar. But I say, what is that? I mean, again, you could trace back, like I say, when did people start, what generation was like, yeah, just spit it on the ground, man. And you say, okay, you realize it's inconvenient for you to hold your gum and spit it in a garbage can, or at least stick it underneath something like they do nowadays. But you can take something that's extremely sticky, you're just going to spit it on the ground and assume it never impacts you, or if someone else behaves, they say that's, someone should write man, once again, I need an anthropologist over here. So, well, all I could say is the Lady Marple loved, not all the time, but that was one of her hobbies, she called it gumballing with no G. And so if someone from her family called, they said, what are you doing? She said, I'm gumballing, just gumballing around. And they say, you and that, they say, Nana Marple, you and that gumball machine. And they say, what are you working? She said, well, I'm just greasing it right now, making sure, doing the annual maintenance. But sometimes she would reorganize it, and then but she liked to just look at it. That was one of the things. Not like she just turned in, and we all have those things. We forget about them. That you just look at and you say, "Huh, that's nice. I like how I feel when I just stare at this with an empty mind." Or staring at that empties my mind. I would propose to say, do you think we could, Lady Marple, what do you say about having someone from the Roy G. Biv Institute weigh in on your gumball machine? And she would say, what's the Roy G. Biv Institute? I said, well, it's an institute I invented, or Roy G. Biv Labs. We could also call it that. But that would give accreditation to Christmas and holiday lights. They'd say, these are Roy G. Biv approved. And she said, well, what would that mean? I said, well, we'll work on that. I said, but you say these lights are Roy G. Biv accredited. And I said, maybe it means, I said, we'll have to get into color theory probably. Or it could just be a nonsense thing that we're using. But I say, wow, is that a Roy G. Biv approved gumball machine? And you would say, not just a gumball machine. Those are Roy G. Biv accredited gumballs in there. I say, are those bespoke? And so she liked looking at it. She also liked the surprise of the guests to see. And this was the thing. This is the thing about sleuths that nobody talks about, especially sleuths with a big heart like Lady Marple. You don't become a lady just because you solve the greatest cases in the history of England, or because you were associated with another Marple, and they said, oh, and you just said, well, if you want to make me a lady, that's fine. No, I'm not that Marple, but I have done a lot, and one day, hopefully I'll have a giant gumball receptacle outside the Tate Modern and a wall for chewing gum before people go into the museum. And part of the art would be someone doing a mouth scan. That would be somewhat performative in some way. And maybe even a spitting area as part of it. But so, oh boy, where was I? Lady Marple. Oh, so one thing about sleuths with big hearts, like Lady Marple, is they love sleuthing for the next great sleuth. Like you got the Stiltons. I don't know who came first, Thea or Geronimo Stilton, but those two are I don't know. And, I'm sure Fancy Nancy found, someone. So she was always on the lookout for someone, particularly someone like her, like a young woman with a spark in her eye, but a weary step. Sometimes those two things come in common, she would say occasionally. And she, it didn't have to be someone. It could be someone else. It could be, one of her friends, or someone. She was always open to being surprised, too, by who would sleuth out what the coin was for. Or who was just naive enough and childlike enough to say, oh, how much are these gumballs? And she would just laugh and say, well, do you want to use that coin in your pocket? Where other people say, is this what the coin was for? And if you use the coin she gave you, of course, there would be a special gumball along with a regular gumball, so there's another door where the special gumball would come out, and it would make a clanging noise. But definitely because she put so much a variety of gumballs in that gumball machine, you'd have to keep your hands under there. Otherwise, it was a pretty heavy door. But sometimes she would put like sprinkle-sized gumball, I don't know if those were gumballs. I don't know what they're called, tiny gumballs. That was another song she would like to sing, though, to people, based on the Don Ho song, Tiny Bubbles. She'd sing Tiny Gumballs. So, yeah, so she would love that when people thought of it, but otherwise she'd say she'd wait for people to mention it. And now I know some of you are even asking yourself, were there other coin-operated machines in Lady Marpbels' abode? And I'd say quite possibly. But this kind of leads us into the great case of the approachable safe. And I just added that great in there to underline the fact that every case that Lady Marpbels on is a great case. But yeah, once upon a time, not that far from where Lady Marpbel was chilling out and kicking at the bog, gumballing around. There was a town, and it was not that far away, and it was the main. It had the big, that's one thing that has been impacted but not gone away is the safe business, and I'm talking about safes, SF, safe and face, spelled this SAFE. Because, you can buy some of that stuff online. Some of them are really heavy. It tends to be a specialized business. And there's also older ones, that might need, or some people want a, refurbished one. But the thing is also that people forget, now this particular safe place it was known as Patience Safes, and it was run by someone named Patience, but they also had a sign out front that said "Safes, Safes, Safe." So it was really, most people knew it as safes, triple safes, or triple safe, or safe, 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 or for shorthand, safes, because you say it 3 times, or you could just say it once with an S, and people would know in this area. If they knew about safes in the safe business, they'd know about safes. And they had an online presence, but don't bother because, this was years ago. But so they don't anymore. And you say, well, I don't find it. And I say, yeah, that's right. This is a story that hasn't been told yet, so it wouldn't be online now that you're listening to it via online. But this just wasn't one business, Patience had multi-businesses, new safes, refurbished safes, buying safes and selling them. So you find a safe, because this region had, it was like it had enough of a metropolitan region in enough of, different generations that people would find old safes and they'd say, hey, this is that. They also pioneered some landmark laws about opening safes. And, actually that was one of their big online things was explaining the legalities of safes and safes. It was, just to explain you the basics, because, I wouldn't know what to do. You say, find a safe, does that mean you can open it? Well, then what if you can't get it open? And what happens, approving the, custodial, the whatever, stewardship of safes. I think that was one of the blog posts. So that's the place known as safes. And so not only did they have kind of a multi-level business and they were known around the greater region, and then people in the business, they'd say, okay, well, you're between London and Manchester. Okay, well, safes is the only place to go. Go talk to Patience. You see, otherwise, you got these others too, but other businesses you could consult, and they all had their own specialties. So they would also work together, to stay relevant. But staying relevant's more than just being good at your job and training people so they could be good at their jobs in the future. it's being a part of the community. So safes was part of the local community. You know, they had tumblers for tumbles, which was a big festival they had every year. They had the Sing Into the Safes Fest. And again, this is kind of in one of those idyllic situations, like with a central green, and safes and some of the other, you know, pubs, restaurants, they were facing it. Now, one of the advantages patients had was patients did own the building and was able to, like, it was a building big enough for two businesses. So you say, okay, well, that's one thing that advantage patients had. Because you say, well, what happened to those other safe businesses? They'd say, well, that was one thing. It's the real estate prices, like, impinged on market, you know, their margins, where patients, that building was paid off. And normally, whatever, we don't want to get into the specifics of it, but they had a couple yearly festivals. They were part of the community. And all that, you know, they would have conductors, they would have all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, as the years got on, as we went from the aughts to whatever they're going to call the after the aughts, the business, you know, was getting thinner and thinner, but it didn't stop that one, safes exist and locksmiths and all that kind of stuff. And that people are going to still need safes from time to time, a variety of safes, and that there's older safes, and there's that whole thing. And, you know, maybe you want to see if you could get the safe open, if that's allowed. Maybe you want to sell the safe. You say, I got this safe. Is it worth anything? It's really friggin' heavy. But it wasn't quite big enough because patients said, okay, well, you know, as they start to look at the safe business and the kind of, I would decline's the wrong word, but the narrowing of it and the people in the safe business, other than Big Safe, you know, that's what they called the big safe companies. But they, you know, they needed one another anyway. Patients said, you know, we got to get the word out. We got to keep every few years, we got to do something big to raise overall general awareness in safes. You know, because really you got the movies, you know, heist movies and stuff like that. And other than that, you know, like it used to be, kids were raised, you know, with cartoons, they saw safes all the time. You know, so they were used to seeing safes in other places other than heist movies or in behind paintings in Billionaire and Super Spy things. So they said, if you raise the awareness of safes, then, you know, every few years, then somebody's going to be like, what was the name? You know, I just found that safe in that attic there, or lockbox or whatever. I can't get it open. I don't know what to do. Well, you could go on YouTube. You see, yeah, and believe me, patients, you know, would have had YouTube figured out if that was still going on. But they'd say, oh, what about that patient safe? You know, out in the, you know, in the Lakelands or whatever. And they say, oh, yeah. What's the name of that? Let's take a trip out there. And there's another thing their website featured, make it a weekend, a safe weekend, if you will. Whether it was couples or families, they would have recommendations, places to stay, other businesses, coupons even. But even that, so every year patients was looking for ideas, you know, strong people to lift safes, juggling safes, different stuff like that. But one year this mysterious person came to town and she said, you know, he called me into town and they said, I'm the mysterious person. And patient said, I'm glad you're here. Are you ready to do your thing? And they said, yes. I'm going to sit out there in the town square, something called the Approachable safe. Have you been working on it? Do you have the safe that meets my specifications? And patient said, yeah, I do. And they said, good, good, good. The patient said, I still don't understand what the idea is, though. You had me build this safe, and you're going to put it in the town square, and you're going to call it the Approachable safe. And you're going to put up signs, and then what? And the mysterious person said, just wait, patience. Be patient, patience, and you will see. But Patience was willing to try. These outside-of-the-box ideas rarely make sense. So stay tuned. And, worked out everything with the town. And then they said they had a big unveiling. They had it covered in cloaks or whatever, mysterious draperies. And they hired, the school choirs and the school bands to play. And they had a little midway and food and jugglers and stuff. Vendors, just a fun day. And then they said, and now, Patience said, this is the reflected on the year of the town. And, the politicians spoke. And then the person of mystery said, and now I present the Approachable safe. And they pulled off a thing, and there sitting on a pedestal was a safe. And you'd say it was like is it a green? Is that a deep green color? And it was one of those ones that looks very heavy. About the size, a bit bigger than one of those refrigerators that hotels or dorms have. One knob on there, whatever that thing is called. Again, I'm not in the safe business. That you spin around, combination spinner thing. And a handle that looked like if you pulled it down, that would open the door. Wood. The safe itself was hard to tell how old it was. It was a deep, deep color. It didn't have any chips or dents on it or scrapes. And then there was all these signs. This is the approach. Do you dare approach the Approachable safe? Who will approach it? And everybody thought it was funny for about 4 days. Even though the mysterious person was changing the signs out, people would walk up to the safe. At first, kids did it, and then finally someone touched it. That took 45 minutes before the first person touched it. And it happened to be an 8-year-old girl. Meanwhile, there was all these high school lads watching, and then they were willing to spin the knob and stuff, but nothing happened. And then it became for a brief time, it already had worked because this just happened to be the start of tourist season. And people would come and they'd take selfies with it because then it became a thing Approachable safe, like a hashtag or something. And they said, go ahead and hug it. Do you dare approach it? Do you dare embrace it? Who will kiss the Approachable safe? And it even had, things for keeping it hygienic and all that. And the safe stayed there, and it rained, and it was sunny. And a mysterious person, they got paid, and they left town, which Patience did think was strange. But this Patience was like, well, that was, I guess it kind of worked because it didn't go totally viral, but it's more popular than the other selfie spots. And people then Patience was like, let's have sign competitions. And then they started telling, Patience even had some, worked with the local libraries and then some of the local papers to have fiction, Approachable safe fan fiction category. So people were writing all these stories. And that was really fun, and then Patience would judge them and say, oh, wow, this one was great. This one where the safe became your best friend, or this one where the safe helped. Even though we can't open the safe, like that, that in your story, it held like an engagement ring or, this special recipe, or just held like a simple note that said, love one another. Those were some of patients' favorite ones. But then the time wore on, and it just got less and less popular. Tourism, it became the fall or the autumn. And some of the people in the town were like, yo, patients, like, what's up with that safe? You going to just leave it out there? Like, isn't it, it's getting kind of old, And patients pointed out that, I have contractually, I'm able to keep it up there till the 1st of January. So, and also I had I also had a contract with this mysterious person, LLC, or, whatever business to keep it up. There was a contract, I already paid them. So I don't know, there might be something still in store. And they said, okay. But then another month went by and they said, people have opinions, especially with the internet and the ability. And they said, but man, it's safe. I used to go out there with my picnic, but I got a safe sitting there. And it reminds me of stuff, or I don't like it. It's on my nerves. Got to get rid of it, patients. And patients said, well, I don't want to be a quibbler, but I don't know. I just can't just get rid of it. One, two, I'm kind of, I feel like I'm obligated to keep it up. And I feel like, and then it became like a thing, just because some people just got a little bit bent about it, and they said, no, we don't care what your obligations are, what the town said. There's a new town council now anyway, and they're revoking the permit that they already gave you. And patients said, well, that's not really my style, like, because, that's just symbolic. You can't really do that anyway. And patients said, I'll tell you what, we're getting, there's some intense feelings here about the safe. I think we've got ourselves a bit of a mystery, like the case of the approachable safe. And maybe we could get Lady Marple to come and figure this out for everybody. And so they said, you think you can get Lady Marple to come? Like, can you get her to come on a weekend? Because then we could have people, she's a lady, that would be great and beloved. I know she says she's not that same Marple and has nothing to do with that Marple, but no one believes her anyway. And she's done great stuff. She's solved mysteries. Wow. Okay, patients, forget everything we said. And they said, actually, could you do it on this bank holiday weekend? Because we could call it the Upper Midland Mystery Days. And patients said, yeah, believe it or not, I took care of some we have a working relationship, so I'll double check. But patients was able to get Lady Marple to come out and did explain that, yeah, it's a bit of a public thing because, and Lady Marple said, I'd be happy to do it. Sounds curious to me. And so Lady Marple came out and the town again made a big deal about it. It got even more press. Lady Marple to come and approach, approachable safe, news at 5, we can't, this is great. And it again kind of raised awareness of, not only safes in general, but of safes, the patients' place, and patients use it to kind of raise money for some of the town charities that they were involved in. And Lady Marple was more than willing to do that. And then the town kind of gathered and then said, okay, well, when's Lady Marple going to inspect the case? And Lady Marple said, this could be like a little performative. I understand it. Set me up a chair. If you get a gumball machine, that would be great. If not, I'm not going to bring my personal gumball machine, but, and maybe we'll do an interview or something, a little bit like a chat, not related to the gumball machine. I mean, not related to the safe. And then I'll talk about my thoughts about this safe. And people could watch me inspect the safe and all that and approach it. And so that day came, and then they did everything. They got everything set up. And the Lady Marple walked around the safe, looked at it curiously. He took some notes even, measured it for fun, got under it, ran around it, skipped around it, hit it with a rubber hammer, hit it with like a tin like a mining hammer, listened to it with stethoscope, sprayed it with air, bunch of stuff. Did a lot of stuff that a kid, chewed gum, walked around it, hugged it, took a selfie with it, and then sat down for the interview. And first they did like a general, kind of a puff piece, but also like curious about Lady Marple. And again, she said, yeah, I'm not that Marple. And they said, well, what do you think about safe? She goes, well, I just want to, want you to think about some things before I tell you the conclusion, because it's going to be somewhat dissatisfactory. That's kind of the thing about this. But she goes, the goal was, right, she goes, the thing about safes is they don't feel approachable. She goes, it's sitting there in the sun, but it still feels cold. But it didn't feel cold when people were dancing around it. And then she said, do you see what I mean? Like, it was just by calling it the approachable. She goes, that was one of the tricks, was by calling it the approachable safe and daring people to approach it. It made it approachable. And she goes, but as soon as that wore off, it again became this kind of thing that's not really ominous, but like safes, you don't really think about them, right? And they said, okay. And they said, so was this some sort of marketing stunt? And she goes, well, this patient's safe has a history of doing marketing stunts every single year, if I'm correct, multiple times if you count the community events. And they said, you're right. And they said, yeah. They said, oh, so is it Patience? It was a mysterious person. And Lady Marple said, not quite. It had to be someone who wanted to, like, maybe that started a business with the intention of slowly raising enough money to fund an art installation at the Tate Modern, or if she couldn't get the Tate Modern, or she, she couldn't get the idea, it'll be like, well, I could put this much down. What other super rich person is going to fund this? Maybe the Queen will hear about it. Maybe she would do something and get coverage, for her new business, where she solves cases. And they said, so you're using this as this is a marketing opportunity of your marketing opportunities. And Lady Marple said, yeah, eyeballs equal gumballs. And she said, by the way, if anybody's watching, picture this, a giant gumball machine in front of the Tate Modern. And they said, and then she said, 1 second, please. Everybody got kind of irritable, because she says, how many people have tried to open the safe? Raise your hand. And she said, how many people actually know the silly rules behind opening some of these locks? And a few kids that had opened lockers or so said, the stupid, you got to go skip by it left, or, skip by it or whatever. And she said, yeah, that's ridiculous, too. And then she said, is anybody and then there was people from the cryptography clubs and stuff who had actually tried to get the combination. And, they had tried latitudes and longitudes and break in the case of the approachable safe. And and a bunch of different stuff. And then she kind of giggled, and she said, they said, was it public knowledge? And she said, kind of. You could have found it out, but it would have been hard. So I don't blame any of you. And she goes, because it's Patience's birthday. And so then they said, Patience, what's your birthday? They said, and then she picked one of the kids that raised their hand. She said, come on up and open this safe for all of us. And she came and opened it, and she said, oh, there's like some papers in there. And she said, oh, that's interesting. Why don't you approach the papers and take them out and bring them to the, because by now, like, some of the town council was like pish-poshing. And then Lady Marpbels said, I'll read these. And it was like a future plan from Patience, who said, in the future, I'm not going to be in the safe business forever. But hopefully I'll be in it for a while longer. We also own these two, I own the shop and the building the shop's in, which houses another shop, which brings in all this rent, and it has this much value. And, I have the business, and this is what I would like to do when I go, to crack the big safe in the sky, is to give all this to the townspeople, but in this very deliberate way. And on top of that, because I think of this hype, we're auctioning this off in the next 10 minutes online. That's Lady Marpbels' idea. Lady Marpbels said, reading from the notes or from Patience, and that money's going to go to establish this fund to create apprentice and what do you call that? To pay for the education of kids anywhere in that region or beyond, full scholarship with housing and food and everything. That people that say, I might want to be in the safe business, and that forever safes will be a place of and they said Lady Marpbels did it, and the calculations are we can run this thing for 90 years, and then everything else will go to the town, these things in the town, but this will be a working teaching business where we'll make safes approachable to the next few generations of safe smiths or locksmiths. But then of course, because she was also a show person, Lady Marpbels did was say, okay, open the safe door the whole way. And they had like a false back in there, like that looked like it was, you could see into the whole safe, but you really couldn't. And what you couldn't see, people had seen it before, but they thought it was just for rainwater. And someone before the presentation had cleaned it out. In the stand that the safe was on was like a channel running down each side, running down the front of it off of a lip, which people said, oh, it's a brilliant way to keep water from pooling around the safe. But she said, children, gather around there, get in line and gather around and put your hands under that, like it looks like a little nozzle spout, and she pulled the back off, and then there was a slow release machine she had in the back of the safe releasing gumballs. And that was how the case of the approachable safe turned out pretty well for everybody, except for people who got, they said, I don't know, like how that turned out. And then everybody lied down because it was a beautiful day, chewing gum. Listen to the town of an entire community chewing gum, laying in the grass of the town green. Some people dreaming of the Tate Modern. Some people dreaming of becoming a locksmith or a safe smith or the cracking the big safe in the sky. Or just dreaming up wacky ideas to keep things interesting, where they, to focus the attention on stuff You say, oh, I needed a refresh there. Good night. All right, I want to thank everybody that reviewed the show on Apple Podcasts recently. 75570. 5 Z's, and then a lot more. Oh, hi, I was listening to Sleep With Me and fell asleep. Whoops, I did it again. And then 5 smiley faces. Let's see what else we got here. 9 years old Gray Fox says, I'm a kid, so my mom was listening, and I wanted to try it. It's amazing. I love it so much. I have trouble sleeping, and sometimes this helps. Been loving it so much from the first time. My mom said it was going to keep me awake, but, I listened again, and I loved it. Thank you so much for my sleep scooter. I do not know how it works, but it does work. All right, I want to thank our newest ambassadors that joined our referral program over at sleepandmepodcast.com/refer. And some of them are already getting referrals. Katie, I want to thank Mika, already got a referral. Victoria, Marigold has already got 2. Logan, Nadia, Tracy, 2 Tracys in a row. G, Katie's already got 3 referrals. Heather, Kathy, Kara, Eden already has a referral. Debbie has 3 referrals. Karen, thanks, and good night. Sophia has a referral. Kelsey, Debbie, Sophie, Loretta, 4 referrals. Andy and Ashley, Caroline has a referral. You wouldn't believe what a huge help this is. What else we got here? Katiana, Greg, Claire, Val, Sarah, Louisa. Lisa has a referral. Amy, Anna, 1 referral. Nadra, Amy, Eleanor, Miranda, Rebecca, Ava, Hazel. Alice has got a referral. Susie, Eula, Mary Lou, Eden, Allison, Denise, Tanya's got 9 referrals, and then Paige. So thank you all for spreading the word about the show or signing up to spread the word, and you'll be future spreading the word. Thank you. By the time you hear this, you'll probably have hundreds of referrals. So thanks, everybody. Sleeping With Me exists a free podcast because people take action through the referral program, through our sponsors, and through our Patreon. That's how we stay free and grow as a show. So I really appreciate it. Thanks for all the support. Good night. Hey, everybody, this is Scoots with like a tuck you in message here for our bedtime story podcast. We're trying out, and I kind of said this, free way to support Sleep With Me and bedtime stories from Sleep With Me is join our referral program. sleepwithmepodcast.com/refer, R-E-F-E-R. You get rewarded for introducing people to a free version of Sleep With Me, including access to Sleep With Me Plus. But most of all, just think about what your favorite podcast is or one of your favorite podcasts, and then support that podcast. It doesn't have to be Sleep With Me, but just to support your favorite podcast, because they could use your support right now. And if you decide, Sleep With Me is actually my favorite podcast, well, wow, blushing, seriously, even though it's imaginary here in this context, and support it at sleepwithmepodcast.com/plus, or listen to a show you love and see how they want to be supported. Thanks.